Good day, everyone, and welcome. Today, we'll be exploring a deeply complex and thought-provoking topic, the moral justification of taking human life. Our discussion will focus on the ethical considerations and the specific conditions under which such a profound action might be justified. As we delve into this sensitive subject, I invite you to engage openly and thoughtfully with the arguments presented. Let's begin. Here we introduce the core ethical question that guides our discussion. Can taking a human life ever be morally justified? This is a profound and challenging issue, especially when viewed through the lens of armed conflict and warfare. The image here symbolizes the complexity and anonymity often involved in such situations, reminding us that behind the ethical debate are real human lives and moral responsibilities. Throughout this presentation, we'll carefully examine the context and arguments surrounding this difficult topic. Here we're looking at the concept of capital punishment, which is essentially the state-authorized execution of a person as a legal consequence for particular crimes. This usually comes into play during formal court proceedings, where a judge, jury, and lawyers carefully consider the evidence and determine guilt. The courtroom setting you see reflects this serious process, highlighting the roles of legal professionals and officials who ensure the trial and sentencing are conducted lawfully. Understanding this context helps us grasp how capital punishment fits within the broader justice system. Here we explore three foundational perspectives on the value of human life. First, intrinsic value means that every human life has inherent and equal moral worth, regardless of circumstances or traits. This emphasizes that all people deserve equal dignity and respect. Next, the conditional value perspective sees human life's worth as dependent on various contexts, like relationships, rights, or social roles. An individual's value can change based on personal characteristics or situations, highlighting that worth isn't always fixed. Lastly, relational perspectives focus on how value is derived from social connections and responsibilities. This view stresses that life gains significance through community bonds and interpersonal relationships. Together, these perspectives offer a comprehensive understanding of what makes human life valuable. Here we explore four major ethical frameworks that guide how we make moral judgments. First, we have deontology, which focuses on following moral rules and duties. This view emphasizes whether an action itself is right or wrong, regardless of the outcome. Next is utilitarianism, which looks at the consequences of an action and aims to maximize overall happiness while minimizing harm. Then there's virtue ethics, which shifts the focus from the action to the character and intentions of the person acting, emphasizing moral virtues like honesty and kindness. Finally, rights-based ethics prioritizes the protection and respect of individual rights when making moral decisions. Each framework offers a unique perspective on what makes actions morally right or wrong, and together they provide a comprehensive approach to ethical reasoning. Here are the key points that form the argument for moral justification. First, respect for human life is fundamental. Any act must honor the inherent value and dignity of human life within the specific context we are considering. This ensures that moral boundaries are upheld. Next, intention matters greatly. It's not just about the action itself, but the motivation behind it. The moral permissibility hinges on whether the intent is ethically sound and aimed at a good purpose. Lastly, we have consequential balance. This means we need to weigh the outcomes of the act to see if they truly justify the moral cost involved. Only when the positive consequences outweigh the negatives can the action be justified. Together, these points guide us toward understanding when an act can be morally defended. Here, we're looking at supporting evidence from both philosophical and practical perspectives. First, from a philosophical point of view, Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative plays a crucial role. It highlights our moral duties, providing a strong ethical foundation for the argument we're making. This helps us understand why certain actions are inherently right or wrong, beyond just personal preference. On the practical side, we have the landmark legal case Brown v. Board of Education. This case established a significant legal precedent by setting a clear standard for equality. It serves as a real-world example of how these moral principles have been recognized and enforced within the justice system. Together, these points strengthen our position by linking deep ethical reasoning with concrete legal standards. Now let's delve into the counterarguments and ethical challenges surrounding this topic. First, there's the moral objection, which holds that taking a life is fundamentally wrong and breaches core ethical principles. This perspective emphasizes the inherent value of human life and argues that no situation justifies intentionally ending it. On the other hand, practical doubts come into play, especially the uncertainty about outcomes. This raises questions about whether lethal actions can ever be justified when we can't be sure of their consequences. This uncertainty complicates decision-making and fuels concern over the potential for unintended harm. Together, these challenges highlight the deep ethical complexity involved and remind us that any discussion about lethal measures requires careful consideration of both moral values and practical realities. Let's begin by addressing the first key point, logical clarification. Often, objections arise from a misunderstanding of the core premise. By interpreting it correctly, we see that the premise actually stands strong and valid, clearing up any confusion. Moving on to the second point, legal evidence. The foundations of our argument are well supported by existing statutes and case law. There are no contradictions here, which means the legal basis is solid and reliable. Finally, empirical support plays a crucial role. Data consistently shows the predicted outcomes, directly countering claims that suggest inaccuracies. This empirical evidence reinforces the overall strength of our position. Together, these three rebuttals comprehensively address common objections and reinforce the argument's validity. Here we see a visual breakdown of public opinion on the argument we've been discussing. The pie chart clearly shows that 45% of people support the idea, while 35% are opposed to it. That leaves 20% who remain undecided, indicating a significant portion is still open to being persuaded. This distribution highlights how divided the public is, which is crucial for understanding both societal reactions and potential legal challenges moving forward. The support and opposition numbers will likely influence policy decisions and public debates, making it essential to consider these views when assessing the wider implications. Here's a summary of the argument we've explored. First, the premise establishes that taking human life must always have a clear moral justification, depending on the context. Moving to the evidence, Kantian ethics highlights the intrinsic value of human life, and the example of self-defense shows how practical necessity can come into play. Finally, the conclusion draws from these points to assert that ending a human life is only morally justifiable when there are strong ethical and practical reasons backing the action. This framework helps us carefully weigh such serious decisions. To wrap up, I recommend adopting a balanced approach that combines moral, legal, and social perspectives when making decisions. This helps ensure that our actions are thoughtful and fit well within the specific context. It's important to recognize the limitations of any argument, especially considering cultural differences and how social norms keep evolving. Staying open to these ethical complexities beyond just legal rules is crucial. Looking ahead, further research is needed to understand how moral justification can adapt to new societal challenges and diverse viewpoints. Continuously evaluating these ideas will strengthen their practical application and relevance.